All right, today we are I got to change the knock sensor on my wife's 2016 Honda Odyssey. I think this applies to 2007 to 2000, or 2006 to 2017. I can't remember. I know it changes, I think at 2018. It's a different part, and it may be a different location. I'm not sure, but this is a 2016, and it's got the 3.5 like all the Honda Odysseys in that date range. So to do this, you do have to remove the intake. I'm going to pull the plenum, and I'm going to pull the intake. Now I do have new gaskets for both. You may or may not need the gaskets, but I figure it's easy to buy them. You can always return them to the parts store if you don't need them. But I don't know how close y'all live to a parts store, but for me it's a little bit of a trip, so I want to have everything on hand that I think I might need. The only thing I didn't get that you could need is the wiring harness. So if you think there's a damaged wiring harness, you may want to pick that up. But I don't believe it's a wiring harness on this. I think it's the sensor itself, so that's what I've got. All right, so I'm going to start by just taking this plastic intake cover off. It's just two little plastic things in the front and the back. It pops out. And that will be the easiest part of this whole job. So go ahead and get that out the way. Actually, I can see there have been mice and rats in here because there are droppings and acorns. So that's a little bit of a concern. Hopefully it's not the wiring harness because I didn't get it. I guess we'll find out the hard way. Okay, I'm going to go over real quick. The cover is off on top of the engine, so I'm just going to go over real fast the tools you need and what you're going to be disconnecting to get this thing off. You're going to need a 10 millimeter socket, a 12 millimeter socket. I use deep well on all mine, but I think most of these can just be a standard socket. So 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter. You're going to need a 27 millimeter socket for the knock sensor itself, and you're going to need some type, if you have a long pair of needle nose pliers, that's nice. Phillips screwdriver, flat screwdriver to push some of the hoses off, and that's going to pretty much be all you need to do this job. So there's several things you're going to be disconnecting as you go through this and as I go through it. You're going to be disconnecting this right here because this top plate comes off first. You don't need to take any of these bolts out around this. That comes off without these bolts. These bolts only hold the two pieces together. So leave these alone. It's only these right around the top that are 10 millimeter. Those come off. And then you have a hose here on the right in front of the throttle body that's going to have to come off. You have a harness here that's going to have to come off. Your intake, this clamp right here, you have to loosen that and slip your intake back and disconnect it. There's a hose that connects to this. If you see these two metal coolant lines, the bottom small one on bottom, it comes down and there's a hose down here. You have to disconnect that and push down because that comes around and connects to the throttle body as well. There's another hose on bottom of the throttle body. There's this hose in the back right here. And then there's going to be there's a large plug right down here, straight down from these coolant lines you're going to have to take off. You're going to have to remove, there's a couple ways you could do this. You could either remove this whole piece, which is much easier, or you can disconnect the hoses. I recommend just removing it. It's two 10 millimeter nuts, and then it just comes off. And then you can just lay it to the side and take it off of your intake. So we'll go ahead and get started and get it taken apart. So I'm going to go ahead and get this plenum off first. I'm going to take this off and get it out the way. I'm going to leave as much on it as possible, like this sensor right here. One thing you do want to be careful of, not just this vehicle, any vehicle where you're dealing with opening up your intake, just be very careful not to drop anything down, and I probably don't even have to say that. I blew off all the trash from up here. Make sure that nothing's gonna fall down in there. If I would have been thinking ahead better, I probably would have sprayed it down with some engine cleaner and cleaned it. But I don't do that very often. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna set this over to the side. Now here's one of your gaskets that you may or may not need to replace. This one looks like it's in really good shape. I'm probably going to reuse this gasket, but now I have access to the bolts down in here, so I can go ahead and get those taken out. I'm going to pull my intake. It should just be this one screw right here. And I got this one other hose back here. You have a mixture of, it looks like 12 millimeter and 10 millimeter bolts in here. All right, we're loose, so I'm going to go ahead and pull all the bolts. So you've got 7 of the 12 millimeter. You have a couple of stud bolts in there that have nuts on them, which is nice. It helps you line it up when you put it back together. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these 2 10 millimeters off the back of this. And it's a nut with a washer on it. They're in a tight spot, and I have a bad wrist, so it's hard for me to, there we go. There's a nut in here. That washer is not coming off like it did on top. Anyway, all right, so I can go ahead and just back that piece off. Kind of welded on there like all the others. And it's in a tight spot. There it goes. All right, we got some coolant coming out of that hose. Oh, there's something else that's got it. Nope. Okay. Oh no, it's not the knock sensor, it's a chewed off wire. Oh, shoot. Well, it would just so happen to be my luck that it is the harness was chewed off. All right, I've got the, so they have these little clips holding the fuel injector wiring harnesses to these little clips here. Just pinch on the bottom if you can, or use some pliers and they'll pull out. And I'm gonna get this fuel rail out. There's a couple bolts that hold it here and here too. And I'm gonna go ahead and get the fuel rail out the way. Now this is a 2016. I want to say again, I know on some vehicles you can get to that knock sensor with a swivel socket, but you are not getting to that intake sensor on this model without pulling this. It's just the way it's down in there. I don't even know how you would unplug it, to be honest with you. Okay, I'm gonna get this fuel rail off on mine. Now, I know that I think it is possible, looking at it, to get, you might could get to that sensor with a swivel socket, but I want to get this front fuel rail off because it's in my way. I want to see what I'm doing. Again, the harness is destroyed from looks like a mouse chewed it up. So I need to unplug it. I need to take it off. And to me, I think it would just be easier to get this fuel rail out the way. So that's what I'm gonna do. You can try to get yourself a swivel, well, no. You can try to get yourself a swivel socket and get that out yourself without pulling this rail. But that's up to you. You know, the rail, as long as you don't damage your O-rings, these O-rings look good. So just be careful with your O-rings on your intake or on your fuel injector. And let's see. Yeah, I could get to it now. Fairly easy. Hopefully you can see it down in there now. So that's it. It's still in a tight spot, but at least I can get to it now. There's a pretty good shot of it. With that fuel rail in the way, it would have been so much harder. And you saw how easy it was to take out. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just try and get this harness off, which is the problem. So there's the harness. You can see it's been chewed by a mouse. Okay. Yeah, there you have it. Chewed it to pieces.
Well, that's, has a tripod to it?
That work? I don't think so.
Could you use that tripod? Or did you show
Huh? No, that tripod ain't gonna work. Mm-mm. It's a 27 millimeter, just so you know. My wife just showed this to me. These knock sensors have some type of tape on them that I guess it's supposed to keep mice from eating through it. It's got a picture of a mouse with an X. And guess what? Doesn't seem to have worked. Just set it in the spot. All right, so it's nice because it has a little nipple sticking out and you can set it in there without it falling over. And what I'm gonna try and do is I'm just gonna try and get a turn on it with a screwdriver. Just very lightly turn on it. And don't make sure to be careful with your wiring harness. All right, let's try and get this socket down there on that thing. Of course, we're not gonna go crazy with this. You don't wanna, it doesn't take much. That's plenty right there. Let's get this out. Come on, guy. There you go. All right, so I lucked out and the Honda dealership by me, I say by me is 30 miles away, but it's the closest one. They had one harness in stock for the knock sensor. So I replaced the knock sensor and now I got the new wiring harness in. It was only $23 from the Honda dealership. So at any rate, we're gonna go ahead and get everything put back together. That's all done. I'm going to go ahead and get my fuel injector snapped back in first, and I'm going to clean those ports. I just got a little cloth and put some gasoline on the end of it to catch, because they have some dirt in there. So I want to catch it. I don't want to push it into the... All right, there's my injector rail. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of lithium grease. I recommend putting a little bit of grease on them when you put them back in. It doesn't have to be lithium. I don't know that it even matters what kind of grease, as long as you put something. I like lithium grease on injectors when I do them. Okay. It should just pop in just like that, and then held on with 2 bolts. So I'll get those back in. You got your guide studs, which again, that's kind of nice. I like that. All right. All right, we got our big studs. All right, 7 of those. And then these smaller ones. The 4 in here are the same length. The one up here is a long one. 4, 5. And then you got your 2 nuts for your stud bolts. Sticking up right there. And there. All right. Okay. Everything's bolted back up. So now I'm going to go ahead and get everything hooked back up. Plugs, hoses, all that fun stuff. Okay, everything seems to be hooked back up. I'll go ahead and get the top plate put back on. Now you do have a gasket that runs long ways down here, right here, and it has to line up with this. So you gotta, that one really should come up and go onto here as well, simply because it has the groove in this part. That looks good. Everything, the gasket's still good. It fits in there. All right, let's go ahead and get this back on here. Okay. That's it. So that's all. We'll put the cup first. I'm gonna go ahead and crank her up. Make sure my engine code. Gotta remember this. All right. I'm gonna go get my scanner, clear it, crank it, see what happens. Okay. Everything looked good. The code cleared and didn't come back. It used to come back immediately, of course, because there's no wiring harness. So that's all. All that's left is this engine cover right there. You pop it in the back and then Do your little turn on your plastic screw in the front and you're done. That's a knock sensor on a 2016 Honda Odyssey. I hope this helps somebody. Really wasn't a difficult job. All it takes is a few tools and some patience. So, all right. Thanks, guys.